We begin. Lock your doors, turn down the lights, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that really happened. Welcome to Mordveil. The lake on my brother's property has no bottom. Me and my brother live on 25 acres out in the middle of nowhere. He inherited it when our dad passed. Our mom and stepdad had already died a few years back, so it's just the two of us. When I say out in the middle of nowhere, I really mean out in the middle of nowhere. A 30-mile drive to the nearest grocery store, 40 to the nearest big city. But we like it. It's nice and quiet. My brother Carl is an artist, not an artsy artist. He does design work for big companies out on the East and West Coast. Does all his work on a computer. He can work from pretty much anywhere that's connected to the internet. Now it costs quite a bit to get internet in the middle of nowhere, but it's possible, and he can more than afford it. Me, I'm Jake. I'm a shiftless, no-good, lazy layabout. At least that's what my stepdad always said. My bio dad, when he wasn't being an abusive drunk, would say pretty much the same damn thing. That's fine. I've made my peace with it. I keep busy by taking care of the place. Doing the lawn care, the maintenance, painting. All the crap work that needs to be done. We have a pretty simple life. The strangest thing about this place is the lake. Well, it's actually just a glorified pond. It's about 80 feet across and almost a perfect circle. Sinkhole, I'd guess. It's way out on the edge of the property past the gazebo. Officially, it's known on the maps as Lake 224, but everyone calls it Gaspar's Lake, after some fella that lived here like 100 years ago. The water is unbelievably clear, way more clear than I would have ever expected, and deep. The thing is, I have no idea how deep it is. I heard rumors in town that it's bottomless when we first moved out here, but I paid it no mind. But you can't see the bottom at all. One summer, I had a fella from the state fish and game department come out and stock the lake with fish. I thought I'd do some fishing that fall, but it just didn't take. Don't know how or why. But come fall, there wasn't a fish to be found. Didn't make any sense. If they'd died, I'd have seen them floating, right? Another thing is the light. Sometimes at night, I could swear I see a glow come up out of the water. I got a nice little setup. I'd sit at the gazebo until late in the evening grilling bratwurst and sipping cold beer from the cooler. But on the way back, that glow. A color that's just not right, you know. Not bright or anything. You can just barely notice it, but it's there. Anyway, my brother doesn't care about any of that shit. He's got no sense of adventure, no curiosity. He's all about deadlines, meetings, and products. Sometimes he'll fly out from the local airport on a puddle jumper to go see a client and leave me out here for a week or two. You'd never get me on one of those tiny single-engine planes. I kind of get the feeling he's embarrassed of me, but whatever. he flew out to North Carolina, or maybe it was Virginia 1 week, and I had the place to myself. So I called up Earl, he's my drinking buddy. I called up Earl and said to him, we're gonna find out how deep Gaspar's Lake really is. He brought over his John boat, and I'd say about 300 feet of half-inch nylon rope. We were going to be real scientific about this. I tied a cinder block to one end, and we marked off the rope in 10-foot sections. He backed his truck up to the water, and we got the boat in and headed out to the center of the lake and dropped the cinder block over. I figured it'd bottom out at 50 feet or so. But shit no. That rope just kept flying right on out. 50 feet, 100 feet, 150, just kept going. Maybe we should tie it off, I asked. Yeah, that's probably a good idea, he replied. We got the free end of the rope tied off round the cleat and watched the rope keep spilling out. Every bit of the rope played out, and the boat resonated with a loud thunk. I pulled the rope a bit up out of the water and could feel the weight of the cinder block on it. Earl. I paused. Earl, there's not any fucking way this lake is 300 feet deep, I said. No fucking way, he nodded. What the actual shit? We got to get more rope, I said. My uncle's got a full industrial spool of half-inch nylon rope. 1,000 feet. There's no lake anywhere around here that's 1,000 feet deep. Earl replied. I grabbed the rope and started to pull it up. It was going to take a minute or two to pull it all back on the boat. Earl started winding it up as it came in. I got about 50 feet of it on board when it just stopped, like just dead stop. I leaned back and pulled harder. Nothing. It felt like the cinder block had gotten caught under a ledge. I wrapped the rope around my forearm and gave it one good heave. Hung up on something? Earl asked. I guess so, I started to say when the rope tugged back. Hard, threw both me and Earl off balance enough the boat flipped over. The water went over my head, and I sputtered, righted myself, and broke the surface. Earl came up right beside me and let out a loud, "God damn it." We struggled to get the boat set right, but we got it. That's when I noticed the cleat had snapped right off. Rope and all had gone down into the lake. So 3 days later, me and Earl were back again. We spent all afternoon setting it up. Got an electric motor to pull the rope back up, and a pulley system at the end of a boom winch. It almost looked professional, bolted there in the back of his truck. Almost. Earl grinned and smacked our jerry-rigged setup on the side. I always knew those machine shop classes I took would come in handy. He backed up the truck and swung the winch over the water. It extended about 10 feet out. I tied off another cinder block, no shortage of those around here, and tossed it in. We watched the rope run and run, the spool spinning freely. We had it set up so it would spin in one direction, but not the other, so we could winch it back up. The rope spooled out faster and faster. 200 feet 300. It's still going, Earl said, incredulity in his voice. 400. No fucking way, I said. Earl stopped grinning around 600. By 800, neither of us was talking anymore. The spool kept spinning all the way to the end. 4 minutes after I tossed the brick in, it ran out with another loud thunk. Hard enough the truck rocked backwards a bit. Jesus, Jake, what in the actual fuck is going on here? That's 1,000 feet of rope. I have no earthly clue, buddy. There's no way it's 1,000 feet deep. I ain't got no more rope. Like, I guess I could order some, Earl said, but was interrupted by a loud groaning coming from the winch. Something was pulling on the rope. I could hear the strain in the fibers. The truck was practically vibrating. Then the front end of the truck started to rise up a hair. Oh shit, Jake. It's gonna take my truck, Earl yelled as he ran over and hopped in. He started the engine and began to pull away when all of a sudden all the tension let out of the line. I went over to the winch and turned it on, and the rope began to wind onto the spool. It took a lot longer to pull it all up than I thought it would, but then I saw and smelled the cinder block. It was covered with a dark, glistening slime, something the color of rotting leaves mixed with oil, and it stank like God. I don't know, a squished bug mixed with kerosene. I cut the line and let the brick drop back into the water. No way in hell I was touching whatever that was. Earl pulled his truck up away from the edge, got out, and came over to where I was staring at the water. A camera, he said. What, like an underwater one? I asked. Yeah, I know a guy. He's got an underwater rig, a little robot submarine. He uses it to inspect bridge pilings, dams, and culverts for the state. It's rated down to 1,500 feet, but it usually doesn't get used that deep. Got lights and a camera. You can drive it around, he said. Sounds like a plan, I said. But Earl, I paused. Isn't this more than a little bit weird? Like, even for around here, maybe we should call somebody, I don't know, like an official. Jake, this is the most interesting thing that I've been mixed up in since Farmer Brindle's two-headed goat got loose in the dollar store. Look around. Nothing happens around here. I nodded. This place wasn't known for its excitement. I'm gonna call him, get it out here, he said. I've got an old VCR we can hook it up to, record what we find, I replied. Earl nodded. Good idea. The next couple of days passed without incident. I spent the time power washing the garage. I know, high excitement, but it's got to get done. Earl pulled up in his truck the next afternoon. It really was a pretty cool setup. The sub was about 4 feet long and had lights and a camera on the front that could be panned around remotely. We tied it off to the winch with the nylon rope. It had its own coil of cable for the camera that we sat on the tailgate. I made sure it had a full charge. Earl said, manhandling it out of the truck, "It'll give us at least a couple of hours." getting it in the water took longer than it should have. The thing was heavier than it looked, and we kept second guessing which end was supposed to go in first. I think the camera end goes in last, I said. That don't make any sense. How's it gonna see anything pointed at the mud? I didn't say pointed at the mud, I said last. As in, we lower it in tail first. Earl looked at me. That's the same thing. We went back and forth on it for a while before we figured out it didn't matter. The thing would right itself once it hit the water. We felt pretty stupid about that. All right, easy now, Earl said as we walked it to the edge. It was awkward, no good place to grip it. For God's sake, Jake, don't drop it. That thing probably cost more than my truck. We got it in without dropping it. Barely. Earl picked up the controller, and we watched it bob there for a second, listing a little to one side, and then it straightened out and sat there humming quietly. Okay, Earl said. Down we go. 300 feet down, it was dark enough that we snapped on the lights fully bright. All it showed was the rough stone on the side of the sinkhole. The water was still crystal clear. Around 400 feet, the walls changed. I almost missed it. Earl, hold up. Can you back it up a little? He reversed the sub, and we both leaned in toward the monitor. The rough, pitted limestone we'd been watching for the last 10 minutes had stopped. What replaced it was dark and smooth, almost glassy. I looked at Earl. He looked at me. We both looked at the monitor. That ain't natural, I said. No, he said, just that. We stayed there a minute, both of us staring at the screen. The sub's lights caught the dark surface and threw back a dull reflection. Whatever it was, it went down as far as we could see. Earl's hand was still on the controller. You want me to keep going? He asked. I should have said no. Yeah, I said, keep going. At 800 feet, the walls just disappeared. The sub drifted out into open water, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The sinkhole had been feeding into something else the whole time. A cavern. The sub's lights didn't reach the far walls, didn't reach the bottom. Just open black water in every direction, and the hole we'd come through sitting in the ceiling like a drain in reverse. Earl, I said. Yeah, he said. Neither of us said anything for a minute. The sub just hung there in the dark, lights cutting maybe 30 feet in any direction, and then nothing. God, Earl said quietly. I wish I'd brought some beer. I laughed, couldn't help it, then stopped. Keep going down, I asked. He already was. Can you point the lights down? I asked. Earl adjusted the controller, and the sub nosed down slowly. The lights swept across what I thought was the bottom of the cavern, and I squinted at the monitor. Something was down there. A tangle of shapes, thick and dark, and piled on each other like cable left in a heap. "What the hell am I looking at?" Earl said, mostly to himself. The sub drifted lower. The shapes resolved a little. Thick as tree trunks, some of them. Thicker. Coiled loosely over and around each other, tapering at the ends, widening in the middle. Some of them were moving, drifting, kind of like seaweed. "Earl, I see it." One of the big ones began to uncoil. It peeled away from the mass, and as it moved, it revealed a surface beneath it. Dark and rounded and covered in a texture I couldn't make sense of at first. It was dark and bumpy like an old avocado. I was still trying to figure out what I was looking at when it split open down the middle. It was an eye, had to be 20 feet across. The iris was the color of old bronze, and the pupil was shaped like a triangle, and it was looking up at the sub. My stomach dropped straight out of me. Then the rest of them started moving. All of it, the whole mass, coming apart into individual shapes. Eyes on every surface, opening. Mouths too, rows of teeth catching the light, opening and closing on nothing. The cables, the arms, whatever they were, filled the cavern below us. The monitor went dark. "Shit, Earl, we have got to get the fuck out of here." I screamed, but Earl seemed frozen. I grabbed Earl's arm. He was still staring at the monitor. Earl, we have to go. Right now." The surface of the pond began to swell and boil. Whirlpools and waves churning around. He blinked, came back. We ran for the truck. We dove in and Earl started it up, but we didn't make it 20 feet before the back end lifted. It had come up fast. Nothing that big should be that fast. The tires left the ground, and Earl screamed something I couldn't make out over the sound of the frame starting to give. I had opened the door and jumped out without even thinking about it. The ground came up quick, and I landed with a wet crack as my ankle snapped. From the ground, I could see the truck maybe 30 feet up, wrapped in something that looked like a giant black and glistening worm being pulled toward the water. Earl was still in there. I know because I could hear him screaming. Then the roof caved in to the sound of shattering glass and metal forced beyond its limit. And then I couldn't hear him anymore as the truck sank beneath the water. The VCR had landed a few feet away. I don't even remember Earl throwing it. I told the paramedics I fell off a ladder. Anyway, now I don't know what to do. My brother's due back in 2 days, and the sheriff keeps coming around asking about Earl. The state inspection fellow wants his submarine back, and I don't know what to tell him. All I got is this busted leg and the video we took, and I'm not sure who I need to show it to. I think I'm going to call the governor. Maybe the press. Should I call the FBI? What should I do?